courts. Bottom line, you lie with impunity. You reject checks and balances, and you ignore Congress and the courts. Your options are limited. Either you're going to resign, Trump's going to fire you, or you will be impeached. I've already called for your resignation. You may remember I hand-delivered my request to you back in May, and I urge you to reconsider resignation because I've taken the first step towards your impeachment, and I've called on the Judiciary Committee to open an investigation into your...
Gentleman yields back. I now recognize the gentlelady from Illinois, Ms. Ramirez, for 5 minutes of questions.
Thank you, Chairman.
American citizens have been arrested or detained. We focus on those that are here illegally.
Secretary Noem, you lie and you lied to the American people. I will be including into the record an article by ProPublica from October 16, 2025, entitled, "We found that more than 170 U.S. citizens have been held by immigration agents. They've been kicked." There's nothing smiling about U.S. citizens. I'm sorry, that's very inappropriate. Let me continue. They've been kicked, dragged, and detained for days. The next one.
The Trump administration has specifically targeted the worst of the worst. The individuals that we are going after are those that are violent criminals, those that are breaking our laws.
Secretary Noem, again, you lied to the American people. I will be including into the record an article by the NBC News from December 7, 2025, entitled, "ICE has arrested nearly 75,000 people with no criminal records, data shows." The co-equal branch of government, and it is your obligation as a member of the executive branch to honor decisions made by the highest court of the land. Yes or no, Secretary?
We are abiding by all federal judges' orders. Absolutely.
The Justice Department said that when the administration was ordered back in March to stop sending detained migrants to a mega prison in El Salvador, you personally made the final call to continue the flights anyway. Is that correct?
And the decisions that are made on deportations, where flights go and when they go, are my decision at the Department of Homeland Security. And we'll continue to do the right thing, continue to work and protect Americans, no matter what radical judge comes out and tries to stop us. We'll do.
You lied on the record, and you lied to members of this committee. You violated court orders by not turning around deportation flights bound for El Salvador, where we know that hundreds of people under your leadership have reported that they were raped, they were beaten, and they nearly died. And your agents used chemical weapons in Chicago despite court orders from District Court Judge Ellis forbidding their use. Secretary Noem, you, Gregory Bovino, and your ICBP and DHS deputized agents have waged an unaccountable, unlawful, unconstitutional war against communities across the nation. Our residents have been surveilled, they've been threatened, they've been tear gassed, they've been hit with pepper balls, they've been shot, they've been subjected to warrantless arrest and precision immobilization maneuvers, they've been kidnapped and disappeared under your leadership. So we have a lot to talk about, but you and your department continue to reject congressional oversight. And you know how I know this? I know this because I requested a meeting with ICE Field Office Director Russell Hutt. I requested a meeting with Field Office Director Samuel Olson. And when you came to Chicago on October 3rd, I publicly and formally requested a meeting with you. So I'm going to be including a letter I sent on October 3rd requesting a meeting with Secretary Noem. So Secretary Noem, I want to ask you again, will you commit to meet with me, yes or no?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you. So we have a lot to talk about, and actually my scheduler has a couple dates that I'll get to you after this meeting. I appreciate that. So look, I want to be very clear. You have misused resources appropriated by Congress. You've engaged in unethical behavior. You have repeatedly made false and misleading statements to Congress and to the press, and you've undermined the separation of powers and disregarded the role of Congress and the courts. Bottom line, you lie with impunity. You reject checks and balances, and you ignore Congress and the courts. Your options are limited. Either you're going to resign, Trump's going to fire you, or you will be impeached. I've already called for your resignation. You may remember I hand-delivered my request to you back in May, and I urge you to reconsider resignation because I've taken the first step towards your impeachment, and I've called on the Judiciary Committee to open an investigation into your lawlessness. Mr. Chairman, I know that at the end we'll be entering a number of articles into consent, but since I have a few moments, I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record a letter calling the Judiciary Committee to investigate Secretary Noem's impeachable offenses. Whatever you choose, the American people will have justice, Secretary, and you will be held accountable. I'm going to make sure of that every single day. With that, Mr. Chair, I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. I now recognize the gentleman from Texas, Mr.
What just unfolded in that hearing was not a routine exchange. It was a direct collision between power and accountability. When Representative Delia Ramirez leaned forward and said plainly and without hesitation, "You lie with impunity," the room changed. This was no longer about policy language or procedural talking points. It became a moment of accusation, one that cut through prepared statements and landed squarely on the question of truth itself. Because what Ramirez challenged was not a single decision or one controversial program. She challenged a pattern of statements made under oath and then contradicted by documented evidence, a pattern of actions taken after courts had spoken, a pattern of authority exercised without restraint, oversight, or consequence. In that moment, the hearing stopped being theoretical. It became personal, and more importantly, it became constitutional. This is how democratic systems are tested. Not in slogans, but in confrontations like this. The executive branch insists it is acting in the name of safety and order. A member of Congress responds by asking whether those actions respect the limits imposed by law. When Secretary Kristi Noem stated that her department abides by judicial orders, Ramirez did not let the claim stand on its own. She cited reporting, she cited data, she cited decisions made after courts ruled otherwise. And then she asked the simplest question in a system built on checks and balances. Who decides whether the law applies? At the heart of this exchange lies a deeper issue. In the American system, no agency operates above the courts. No secretary answers only to their own judgment. Power is deliberately fragmented because history teaches that unchecked authority, no matter how well-intentioned, eventually drifts from accountability. When an executive official suggests that court orders can be disregarded if they are deemed inconvenient or ideological, that is not strength. That is defiance of the very framework that grants legitimacy to government action in the first place. Ramirez's argument was not abstract. She described communities subjected to enforcement actions that stretched beyond warrants and oversight. She described resources appropriated by Congress being used in ways Congress never authorized. She described a department that, in her words, rejected oversight not quietly, but repeatedly. Meetings requested, letters sent, public appeals made, and silence in response. Oversight is not a courtesy. It is a constitutional obligation. When it is ignored, the balance of power begins to tilt. And then came the line that will echo far beyond this hearing room. Bottom line, she said, you lie with impunity. Those words matter because they capture a fear shared by many Americans across political lines. Not fear of disagreement, but fear of consequence disappearing. Fear that when leaders know they will not be held accountable, truth becomes optional. Fear that institutions meant to protect rights become instruments that answer only to themselves. The secretary responded with confidence, even defiance, asserting that decisions would continue regardless of what she called interference. But confidence is not the same as legitimacy. Legitimacy comes from adherence to the law, not from dismissing it. In a constitutional republic, courts do not advise. They rule. Congress does not suggest oversight, it demands it. When those roles are minimized, the system does not become more efficient. It becomes more fragile. This is why impeachment was raised, not as theater, but as process. Impeachment is not a verdict. It is an investigation. It exists precisely for moments like this when allegations involve misuse of authority, disregard for lawful orders, and erosion of checks and balances. Ramirez made clear that resignation, removal, or investigation were not threats. They were outcomes built into the system itself. The system anticipates failure, and it provides mechanisms to respond to it. What makes this moment so significant is not just the accusation, but the clarity with which it was delivered. There was no hedging, no rhetorical fog. Ramirez stated that the American people would see accountability one way or another. That promise was not emotional, it was procedural. It rested on documents entered into the record, letters submitted, and committees called to act. This is how accountability begins. Not with outrage alone, but with evidence and persistence. And yet, the deeper question remains unresolved. Can a system designed to restrain power still do so when power resists restraint? Can truth prevail when authority insists on its own version of events? Those questions do not belong to one party or one hearing. They belong to every citizen who expects the law to apply evenly, regardless of title or position. As the gavel moved on and the next speaker was recognized, the weight of what had been said lingered in the room. Because moments like this are not about winning an argument. They are about defining the boundaries of governance itself. They remind us that democracy does not erode all at once. It erodes when lies go unanswered, when oversight is ignored, and when consequences are delayed indefinitely. The American people were promised justice. Not vengeance, not spectacle, justice. And justice requires vigilance. It requires attention. It requires voices willing to confront power directly, even when that power refuses to listen. This is why hearings like this matter. This is why records are entered, letters preserved, and investigations demanded. Because accountability is not automatic. It must be pursued. And if you believe that truth should never depend on who holds office, if you believe that no official stands above the law, and if you believe that democracy survives only when citizens stay informed and engaged, then support the work that brings these moments into the light. Subscribe to Liberty Report USA. Support our work to expose the truth.